And this survey came out 7 years ago. And this is part of that survey. You can find it. But it wasn't reported like that, was it? It wasn't at all. Yes, this war is Islamic. Let me tell you. We can deny that. We can say that it's not. We can say the jihadists hijacked the religion. Again, it's irrelevant what we think. The fact is, they do what they do in the name of Islam. They do it based on contemporary interpretation of Islamic scripture. You can read what they write. You can watch their videos. Everything that they do is based on their understanding of Islamic scripture. And for a Catholic such as me, non-Muslim, to try to argue that with them is ridiculous. That's like us saying in 1943 that the Nazis got Mein Kampf all wrong. I mean, what good would that possibly do? That's essentially what we're saying now. The good news is that the overwhelming majority of Muslims evidently don't believe this because they haven't acted on it. But there's a lot of them that have. This is a global war. We mentioned all those places where these insurgencies are going wrong. There's a lot of violence out there based on this. There's a book I'm going to recommend to you. It's called The Al-Qaeda Reader. It was written by a guy named Ibrahim. Basically what he did is he took all the writings, not all of them, but the major writings of the leadership of Al-Qaeda. Ayman al-Zawahiri, Osama bin Laden, some of the other founders of Al-Qaeda, and he translated them into English. And you read this book. Don't tell me it's not based on Islam. As far as they're concerned, it is. And let me tell you, in warfare, the enemy's reality becomes your reality. You can deny it all you want, but the basis for what they're doing is what we have to understand and come to terms with. Denying that does not make us any safer at all. And we have on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat alike, and independent, been in denial for 13 years. So it's global, and yes, it's Islamic. And it's an insurgency. So what do you think of when you think of insurgency? Is there any form of special forces warriors here? Well, usually there are. Usually I'm able to call on one Green Beret or SEAL who is trained in counterinsurgency. They give a good definition of insurgency. When you think of insurgency, you think of guerrilla warfare, irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, things like that. And there's no doubt that component is a large part of the global Islamic insurgency, but the reality is, the facts are, insurgencies are only 10 to 20% military. They're 80 to 90% political. Now, on the battlefield, whenever the U.S. military has had an opportunity to go toe-to-toe with our enemies, be it the Taliban, or Al-Qaeda, or other jihadists, it's not even a fair fight. The U.S. military completely waxes everyone. We've taken casualties and swooped out. We've lost a lot of good men and women. But the reality is, on the battlefield, the U.S. military decimates them. It's a complete mismatch. But in the political arena, they're kicking our butts. It's not even close. And that's the 80 to 90% of the insurgency they expect to do, however, is to defeat us in the political arena, because we won't even identify the fact that they're doing it to us. It's an analogy that I'm sure you're all familiar with. If you take a frog and throw it into a boiling pot, that frog will jump right out. If you take a frog and put it into a pot of water and slowly turn up the heat, the frog will stay in that pot and boil to death. Violent insurgency involves throwing a frog in a boiling pot of water. The political component of the global Islamic insurgency involves slowly turning up the heat on us, running influence operations against us, against our media, against our elected officials, against our appointed officials, against our intelligence apparatus, against our law enforcement officials. They've infiltrated us. In that realm, they're beating us because we refuse to even engage them there. If you don't mind, I'll take questions at the end of my prepared statement, because otherwise we'll just we'll get too into the weeds. So. Since you said it, I have to make it. Right, that's the myth. There's an urban legend going on the internet that the Japanese do not allow Islam in Japan. It's just not true. Japan has many mosques, has a Muslim population, has had for some time. They're very restrictive for all immigrants, but they don't have a particular restriction on Islamic immigrants or anything else. Japan has close relations in particular with Iran, close economic ties, close diplomatic ties with Iran. So he asked me about Japan, so I just felt like I needed to address that. But if you'll hold your questions and comments until afterwards, I'll be happy to stay as long as you need me to address anything that you need me to address, so that we can get through this in as expeditious a manner as possible. The organization that has primarily been responsible for the political wing of the global Islamic insurgency is the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, years ago, not too many years ago, but when I first started giving this presentation, I had to tell people what the Muslim Brotherhood was. I don't have to do that anymore. Has anybody in this room not heard of the Muslim Brotherhood? Yeah, not a single hand goes up. If I had been here 10 years ago and I asked you about the Muslim Brotherhood, there would have been 20 people maybe that heard of it, nobody else. Muslim Brotherhood was founded in Alexandria, Egypt, actually, in 1948. By a school teacher named Hassan al-Banna. Hassan al-Banna, like many Muslims, was furious over something that had happened in 1924, 4 years before. What had happened in 1924 was Kemal Ataturk, the leader of Turkey, had shut down the caliphate, dissolved it. This was a humiliating event for Muslims around the world. Now, the Caliph hadn't really had any real power since the 13th century, but it was still a symbol of Islam. And if you look at Islamic doctrine, their goal is supposed to be to have a caliphate, a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, to rule by sheer law. Attitudes get away with that. Infuriated Muslims around the world. But they were still relatively weak. Wasn't much they could do about it. establishes the Muslim Brotherhood. It is the granddaddy of all Islamic terrorist organizations. Now, today they will claim that they're not violent. There's mountains of evidence to refute that, but the reality is, right from the get-go, they were violent. They don't deny that they were violent. What happened was that later on, they made a deal with the Egyptian government to have a lot of their members released if they swore off violence against the Egyptian government, which they did for a while. That's where the myth was developed that the Muslim Brotherhood is non-violent. But the Muslim Brotherhood was the incubator for all of the jihad's terrorist groups. So Osama bin Laden was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood as a child. Ayman al-Zawahiri, the current head of Al-Qaeda, was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the former number 3 of Al-Qaeda, was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. All of them were members of the Muslim Brotherhood. They have millions of members, something like 90 countries around the world. This is the primary method by which they wage the political wing of the Islamic insurgency, is through the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, what's the difference between the Muslim Brotherhood that claims to be non-violent and groups like Al-Qaeda? Well, only their methods. Now, you all familiar with General Clapper, who is Director of National Intelligence? He was on TV when the violence started in Egypt. And Sue Meyer, who was on this video, she was a congresswoman from North Carolina. She said she retired. She was the head of the counterterrorism caucus in Congress. Just an awesome congresswoman. She questioned him at a hearing and asked him about the Muslim Brotherhood. And I can't quote him, but he said something to the effect that you can find this on YouTube. There's about 20 of these on YouTube of him saying this, that the Muslim Brotherhood was nonviolent and largely secular. Secular. Well, you go to their website, or their Facebook page, or their Twitter page. Isn't that nice that the Muslim Brotherhood has a Facebook page and a Twitter page? Here's their motto. Allah is our objective, the Prophet is our leader, Quran is our law, Jihad is our way, dying in the way of Allah is our highest hope. That's their motto. Sound secular to you? Not really. Sound non-violent to you? Maybe not. The Director of National Intelligence on national television said that. You're in deep trouble. Not like you didn't already know that. That's just another example of it. So you know the Muslim Brotherhood has been active in many countries around the world. Only found out relatively recently how active they were in the United States. They're very active here. How did we find that out? Back in, I think, 2004, the Virginia State Trooper was on patrol. And invariably, when something like this is found, it's because a local cop saw something that didn't fit and said, and took action. An example I use, let me just do a sidetrack here. There was another Hezbollah cell which was uncovered in Charlotte, North Carolina in 1998. It was uncovered because an off-duty sheriff's deputy was working the detail at a warehouse and saw Middle Eastern males going back and forth with garbage bags full of cash. This was before 9/11, 1998. So he said, that doesn't quite right. And he called somebody in the DATF because there's a lot of bootlegging tobacco products there, obviously. Sure enough, they were bootlegging cigarettes and raising money to send it back to Hezbollah in Charlotte, North Carolina. All because the off-duty sheriff's deputy saw something that didn't fit. That's why it's so important that this information be disseminated for state and local law enforcement. We have a program back in America called Englewood that does just that. You take an FBI agent, and they get sent all around the country. I'm happy to have been born in New Orleans, grew up in New Orleans. And I can use this example for those of you who have seen this, those of you who heard about New Orleans. You take an FBI agent from Nebraska, send him to New Orleans. Everything's going to look out of place to him. I mean, I have lived in New Orleans for years, and I go there and looks out of place to me. But to a New Orleans cop, he knows what's supposed to fit. So in 2004, Virginia State Trooper on patrol notices a Middle Eastern couple in a car. And he notices the Middle Eastern because the female has a hijab on. Okay? They're filming the support structure with a video camera of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. Yeah, it doesn't cut right there. He pulls it over. Turns out that the husband was wanted on an immigration charge. Get this, I didn't know that they had this. He was something called an illegal alien. Did you know that? Illegal alien? Well, evidently they do, and this guy was one of them. So they brought him in. He was a member of Hamas. One thing led to another. The FBI raided his home office, which was in the basement of his house. There was a false floor in the basement, and they found a treasure trove of documents under the false floor. Okay? Those documents were later used in the largest successful terrorism financing prosecution in U.S. history. The U.S. versus the Holy Land Foundation. Anybody here familiar with that? Probably a few people. The U.S. versus Holy Land Foundation. Among that treasure trove of documents, there was a memorandum that's 18 pages long. And the theme of the document was an explanatory memorandum on the general strategic goal for the group in North America. Now, the group is the Muslim Brotherhood. It's 18 pages long. Don't worry, I'm not going to read all to you. But there is a mission statement in there, which is probably the most important passage in this document. Before I read this to you, let me just say, the word Ikhwan in Arabic means brothers. That's what they refer to themselves as, the Muslim Brotherhood does, is the Ikhwan. So here's their mission statement in America. The Ikhwan must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Pretty straightforward, huh? Sounds an awful lot like subversion, insurgency, political insurgency. But they refer to it as civilizational jihad. We've seen violent jihad. You know all about that. Civilizational jihad is another type of jihad. And it's all about using our laws and our freedoms against us to attempt to bring us down. Now, a lot of people will dismiss this, but let me tell you something. This is a very large, very motivated organization, and they are extremely well funded by our money. Remember, we're funding both sides of this war because of our dependence on foreign oil. And that's where the money comes from, to fund the Muslim Brotherhood. But more importantly, page 18 of this 18-page memorandum, the Muslim Brotherhood was kind enough to list its affiliates in the United States. Now, this is the part that's going to give you a headache. because it goes against what you've been told. On this list of 29 organizations, every major Muslim organization in the United States is on this list. I didn't say most, I didn't say some, I didn't say a few. Every major Muslim organization in the United States is on this list identified as Muslim Brotherhood affiliate. Now, this document was in the evidence in the Holy Man Foundation trial, in which all defendants were guilty, found guilty, prosecuted successfully, put in jail. This document was stipulated to by the defense. Are there any lawyers in the room? So we have a couple lawyers. Would someone please say what, enlighten us as to what the meaning of the term stipulated is?
You don't have to read the document. It goes into evidence without any further evidence.
So they acknowledge that it is what it says to be, right? Okay. So this document was acknowledged by the defendants in the Holy Man Foundation, the largest terrorism financing trial in U.S. history, as being what it said it was. Let me share with you a couple of the organizations here. ISPA, Islamic Society of North America. It's the largest Muslim organization in the United States. Muslim Brotherhood organization. MSA, Muslim Students Association. This is the original Muslim Brotherhood organization in the United States. It's been operating in the United States since 1961, when the first MSA chapter was founded at the University of Illinois in Urbana. Today, there's an MSA chapter on just about every college campus in America. I can promise you, they have one at the University of South Florida, University of Florida, Florida State, Miami, Florida International, Florida Atlantic, all of them. I wrote a paper on the Muslim Students Association last year, and it's essentially a farm team for jihad. When you look at the number of their former members, and even former chapter presidents, who are now in jail on terrorism charges, or wanted on terrorism charges, and have joined jihadist groups. It's frightening. Skipping down, number 8 on the list is NAIP, N-A-I-P, North American Islamic Trust. This organization is important because North American Islamic Trust, depending on whose numbers you use, owns clear title to between 27% and 80% of all the mosques in the United States. Where did I get those numbers? 27% figure came from an author named Stephen Schwartz. He wrote a book called The Two Faces of Islam. Schwartz is a former Jew who converted to Islam. And he claims that North American Islamic Trust owns 27% of the mosques of the United States. But there was an imam from a Sufi mosque in the U.S. who was worried about the Wahhabi influence from Saudi Arabia. That was the Saudi flag over the wall. But that didn't do all fuzzies. He claimed that 80% of the mosques in the United States were owned by NAIP. NAIP is almost fully funded by Qatar and Saudi Arabia. The only two nations on earth whose official state religion is Wahhabi Islam, which is the flavor of Islam that gave birth to Al-Qaeda. Number 22, the the Islamic Association of Palestine. You probably don't recognize that name because they changed their name. They folded up the Islamic Association of Palestine, established an organization called CAIR, Council of American Islamic Relations, which is probably the most vocal Muslim Brotherhood group in the United States. All of these organizations, incidentally, remain the undying co-conspirators in this Holy Land Foundation fraud. It was the intention of the Dallas U.S. Attorney's Office to prosecute these undying co-conspirators, particularly me. But Attorney General Eric Holder shut down that investigation. That's documented. There's an investigative journalist online who's written about that, named Patrick Poole, P-O-O-L-E, written about it. You can look it up. The Holy Land Foundation, that was the largest Islamic charity in the United States. They were found to have given millions of dollars to jihadist terrorist groups overseas. Now, how do you suppose the Holy Land Foundation became the largest Muslim charity in the United States and subsequently got shut down for funding terrorism? How do you suppose it got to that position? Well, it got to that position because the organization that had been the largest Muslim charity in the United States before the Holy Land Foundation had been shut down for funding terrorism. And that charity had become the largest Muslim charity in the United States because the charity before it, that had been the largest Muslim charity in the United States, was shut down by the Treasury Department for funding terrorism. Once again, we see a pattern here. So all of these organizations, Muslim Brotherhood front groups, being unindicted co-conspirators, what are their methods for the political insurgency? We don't want to get into the Indian. They run influence operations. Let me just give you an example of the effectiveness of the influence operations that they've been running. Under President Bush, Condoleezza Rice, when she was Secretary of State, had a policy that we would not, in the State Department, they were not to use the term jihad or jihadist. Now, Mr. Brennan, who is now CIA director, but was before a counterterrorism advisor to President Obama, said the same thing in his speech at the Center for Strategic International Studies in Washington, D.C., saying we don't use the term jihad or jihadist because jihad is a legitimate tenet in Islam. Now, where do you suppose they came up with this kind of a law? They had help. They didn't just wake up one morning and say, no, I don't like that word jihad. Republican and Democrat, years apart, both came to the same conclusion. They had help in reaching that conclusion because there are members of the Muslim Brotherhood in government service and advising our elected officials. And it just didn't start when Obama came in office. So let's take a look at the term jihad. I'm going to put down this microphone because I don't want to go get that speaker and blow my ears out and your ears out. So I'm going to grab my books. Oh, what? Mr. Clinton, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So, remember back in 2006, Pope Benedict had made some comments about Islam, and specifically referred to the term holy war. In 2006, we said that. You may not remember, but there was a lot of anger in the Muslim world when he said that. And group of 37 Islamic scholars wrote a letter to Pope Benedict after he gave that speech, saying that we would like to point out that holy war is a term that does not exist in Islamic language. Jihad must be emphasized means struggle, and specifically struggle in the way of God. So, we've heard this argument before. Jihad is a struggle, right? Maybe not. I've got three authoritative sources here. The first one I want to share with you is a book that you can buy on Amazon.com called The Lions of the Traveler. This is perhaps the most widely read Islamic law text. This is like the Sharia law book. You buy it off Amazon for $29.95. It was translated into English by a guy named Englewood, who was a Muslim convert who now lives in Syria. At least he did when he translated The Lions of the Traveler into English. Englewood was one of the guys who signed that letter to the Pope saying, "You've got jihad all wrong." So let's take a look at Englewood's own book. Page 599. Jihad. Jihad means to war against non-Muslims, and is etymologically derived from the word mujahada, signifying warfare to establish the religion. Huh? Does anybody need me to read that again? Did I read it too fast? So you mean jihad doesn't just mean struggle? Because it does also mean struggle. But here the Sharia law text says to war against non-Muslims. Technically they're right. It doesn't mean holy war, because it doesn't translate directly to mean holy war. But it doesn't just mean struggle. So when we refuse to use the term jihad as government policy, we've been influenced. It's an influence operation. They control the way that we think about them and what we say about them. That's what is known in modern warfare as information dominance. They're dominating us. So I go to the Noble Quran. This is one version of the Quran published in Saudi Arabia. And I will find the definition of jihad in here. If you'll just bear with me a moment. Here it is. This is the Noble Quran, page 47. This is the notes to Surah 2 Al-Baqarah. This is where jihad is first mentioned. Surah 2, verse 190. And fight in the way of Allah, those who fight you, but transgress not the limits. Truly, Allah likes not the transgressors. And kill them wherever you find them, and turn them out from wherever they have turned you out. And al-fitna is worse than killing. That's the verse. But here are the notes. In this version of the Quran, published recently in Saudi Arabia, al-jihad, then it has in parentheses, holy fighting in Allah's cause with full force of numbers and weaponry, is given the utmost importance in Islam and is one of its pillars on which it stands. By jihad, Islam is established. Allah's word is made superior, and His religion is propagated. Pretty clear. I would read the third Sharia law text. It basically says the same thing, so I'm not going to belabor that point. But you see, we've had government officials from two administrations basically eliminate the term jihad from our vocabulary, official vocabulary. And yet, if you read their own document. What they say it is not is exactly what it is. Pretty straightforward. We are in active denial as a nation. And because of that, they are creeping Sharia into our society. Remember, their goal is the imposition of Sharia law. And that's what we have to guard against. And one of the things that's being done here in the state of Florida, Senator Alan Hayes, is something called American Law for American Courts. Legislation that says that a court in this state shall not recognize or impose a foreign law or foreign legal doctrine in a decision if the imposition of that foreign law or foreign legal doctrine would violate any of the fundamental constitutional rights of the parties involved. Now, it seems like an awful convoluted way to stop in Sharia, but the reality is that's the way it has to be done. We have to orient towards protecting our Constitution. Our Constitution is our vanguard. And people say it's not necessary. Sharia will never happen here. Yeah, it has. When I was with the Center for Security Policy, I co-authored a report in which we detailed 50 sample cases from 23 states in which Sharia, in fact, came up in state court cases, principally in family law. So, this American Law for American Courts legislation has been brought up in Florida now for a few years in a row, but it's always fallen short of the Senate. It's passed the House a couple years in a row. It's coming up again this year, and we're hopeful that it will pass the Florida. We passed this legislation in Tennessee, Louisiana, Arizona, Kansas, North Carolina, Alabama, and Oklahoma. And a version of it passed in South Dakota and Washington as well. So we're very hopeful to have it passed in Florida and other states during this legislative session. So one of the questions that I always get is what can we do? Well, that's one small step that you can take in the state of Florida is to support American Law for American Courts when it comes up in the upcoming legislative session. If you don't mind, at this time, I'd like to open the floor to questions. Would that be all right, sir?
I think what we need to do is